They were supposed to be unstoppable. That was the first thing every civilized species in the galaxy agreed on. The creatures that humans would later call the Kharvax were not an army, not an empire, not even a species in the traditional sense. They were a moving extinction event. Wherever they arrived, life ended. Planets went silent. Entire systems became graveyards. No negotiations, no warnings, no survivors. For centuries, the Kharvax moved through the outer spiral arms, devouring everything in their path. Fleets shattered against them. Planetary shields failed like paper. Advanced civilizations that had mastered faster than light travel and antimatter weaponry disappeared within weeks. The survivors, the few scattered refugees who managed to escape, spoke of monsters that could not be reasoned with. Creatures that adapted to every weapon, every strategy. Their bodies reshaped under fire, their minds learned instantly, their hunger never ended. So when the Kharvax changed direction and began moving toward the Orion Arm, panic spread faster than their ships. Because in the Orion Arm, there was a young, unpredictable species. Humans. At first, the galactic community did not believe the threat was real. Humans were new, barely out of their own system, reckless, emotional, and divided among themselves. They fought wars over borders, politics, and beliefs. They were not the kind of species that stopped extinction-level threats. They were the kind that became extinct. Warnings were sent anyway. Long-range transmissions, encoded messages, desperate pleas. The humans replied. The response was short. We hear you. Then nothing. No evacuation requests. No alliance formation. No signs of panic. Just silence. The Kharvax entered human space 3 years later. They expected resistance. They did not expect preparation. The first contact happened at the edge of the Sol system. A Kharvax vanguard fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Pluto. Observers watching from distant systems braced themselves for the usual outcome. The destruction of another civilization. Instead, something strange happened. The human fleet did not attack. They waited. The Kharvax moved forward, their ships shifting and writhing like living organisms. Their hulls were grown, not built. Tendrils extended, sensing, probing, analyzing. Still, the humans waited. Then the trap activated. Space itself seemed to fold. A lattice of energy snapped into existence around the Kharvax fleet. Not a shield, not a weapon, something else. A cage. The Kharvax reacted instantly. Their ships surged forward, firing beams that could tear apart planets. The energy lattice absorbed everything. The structure did not break. It did not even flicker. It tightened. Observers recorded the moment in stunned silence as the entire Kharvax vanguard fleet was compressed, contained, and immobilized. Captured. No one had ever seen that before. The Kharvax did not get captured. They were the ones who captured worlds. Yet here they were, trapped inside a human construct, unable to move. The humans finally spoke. Welcome to our system. What followed was even more unbelievable. Instead of destroying the trapped fleet, the humans began transporting it. Massive vessels surrounded the cage, locking onto it with precision. Slowly, carefully, they towed the entire trapped armada deeper into the Sol system. Destination Earth orbit. By the time the galactic observers understood what was happening, it was already done. The monsters that had consumed entire civilizations were now prisoners. Inside a human prison. The structure they were placed in became known across the galaxy as the Vault. It was not a typical prison. It was a ring of interconnected containment chambers, each one designed to hold something that could not be killed. Because the humans had learned something during their years of preparation, the Kharvax adapted to destruction, so the humans stopped trying to destroy them. Instead, they learned how to contain them. Inside the Vault, each Kharvax entity was isolated. The creatures, once part of a collective swarm, were forced into individual cells. The energy fields within each chamber were not static. They shifted constantly, adjusting frequencies, pressures, and dimensional constraints. The Kharvax tried everything. They changed shape, becoming blades, mist, solid mass. They attacked the walls, the floors, even themselves. They attempted to merge, to communicate, to revolve. Nothing worked. The prison adapted faster. Humans watched from behind layers of reinforced observation decks. Scientists, soldiers, engineers. They studied the creatures with a calm focus that unsettled every alien observer who gained access to the footage. Because the humans were not afraid. They were curious. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. More Kharvax fleets arrived. And one by one, they were captured. The humans had turned their entire system into a defensive web. Gravity traps, energy lattices, spatial distortions. Every approach was monitored. Every incursion was anticipated. The Kharvax kept coming. The humans kept capturing them. The galaxy watched in disbelief as the unstoppable force slammed again and again into a wall it could not break. Eventually, something changed. The Kharvax stopped attacking. For the first time in recorded history, the swarm hesitated. Long-range sensors picked up their fleets gathering at the edge of human space. Thousands of ships, forming a massive cluster. They did not advance. They waited. Then they sent a signal. It was crude, inefficient, and unlike anything the Kharvax had ever transmitted before. A message. Humans received it. For several hours, there was no response. Then, a human vessel moved out to meet the waiting swarm. Not a warship, a transport. Inside it was a single human. Dr. Elena Voss, lead xenobiologist of the Vault. The decision to send her had shocked many within the human leadership. If the Kharvax were capable of communication, they were also capable of deception. But Elena insisted. If they're trying to talk, she had said, then we need to listen. The transport approached the edge of the Kharvax formation. No weapons were armed. No shields were raised. A channel opened. The signal that came through was fragmented, layered, and distorted. It sounded like thousands of voices trying to speak at once. But there was meaning. Why do you cage us? Elena did not hesitate. Because you destroy everything. Silence followed. Then the response came again, clearer this time. That is our nature. Elena leaned forward slightly. And this is ours. Another pause. You do not destroy us. No, Elena said. We learned that does not work. Then why do you keep us? The question hung in the silence. Elena looked out at the massive formation of alien ships, each one a living weapon, each one capable of ending worlds. Then she answered, because you can learn. The signal flickered. We do not learn. We consume. Elena shook her head. You adapted to every species you faced. Every weapon. Every defense. That is learning. That is survival. Exactly. Elena said. And we are giving you a new environment to adapt to. Another long silence. You cage us to change us. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Something like that. The Kharvax response came slower now, as if the swarm itself was struggling to process the concept. Change requires time. We have time, Elena replied. Inside the vault, the experiments shifted. Humans began introducing controlled variables into the Kharvax cells. Patterns, stimuli, structured interactions. They were not trying to break the creatures. They were trying to teach them. At first, there was no response. Then, small changes appeared. A Kharvax entity in one cell began to mimic patterns projected onto its containment field. Another stopped attacking the walls and instead observed them. Weeks later, one of them responded to a signal. Not with violence, with imitation. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The monsters were changing. Not quickly, not completely, but undeniably. The Kharvax, the unstoppable force of destruction, were adapting to something new. Restraint. It was not a transformation. Not yet. The creatures were still dangerous, still unpredictable. But they were no longer purely destructive. They were learning. Years passed. The vault expanded. More captured Kharvax were brought in, each one placed into the evolving system of containment and study. Human scientists refined their methods, developing ways to communicate more effectively. Eventually, they achieved something no one thought possible. A conversation. It happened with one of the earliest captured entities, designated Subject Zero. Unlike the others, Subject Zero had been in containment the longest. It had been exposed to every experiment, every signal, every attempt at communication. And one day, it responded. Not with noise, with meaning. The recording of that moment became one of the most important events in galactic history. The human researcher, a young man named Aaron Patel, stood before the containment field. "Can you understand me?" he asked. The Kharvax entity shifted, its form stabilizing into something almost symmetrical. "Yes." Aaron froze. Then he smiled. "Okay, that is a good start." The entity pulsed. "Why are we here?" Aaron took a deep breath. "Because you were killing everything. That is what we do." Aaron nodded. "Yeah, we figured that out." Silence. Then the entity spoke again. "Why did you not kill us?" Aaron leaned against the observation console. "Because we wanted to see if you could be something else." The entity remained still for a long moment. Then it asked the question that changed everything. "What else is there?" Aaron did not have an answer ready. So he gave the simplest one he could. Choice. The concept was foreign to the Kharvax. They had never needed it. Their existence had always been singular. Consume, expand, survive. Now, for the first time, they were being introduced to the idea that there could be alternatives. Over the following years, that idea spread. Not through words alone, but through experience. The controlled environments of the vault allowed the Kharvax to explore behaviors they had never exhibited before. Cooperation, observation, restraint. Not all of them changed. Some remained violent, resistant, unwilling to adapt. Those were kept in deeper containment, isolated and monitored. But others began to shift. The first time two Kharvax entities interacted without attacking each other, the entire research team celebrated. The first time one of them responded to a human command, the galaxy took notice. The first time one of them chose not to harm when given the opportunity, everything changed. The Kharvax were no longer just monsters. They were something new, something uncertain. Years later, the swarm returned. Not to attack, to see. A massive fleet gathered once more at the edge of human space. But this time, their formation was different. Less aggressive, more structured. Humans met them again. This time, they brought something with them. A Kharvax, Subject Zero. Contained, but visible. The entity had changed. Its form was more stable, less chaotic. Its movements were deliberate. The human transport stopped at a safe distance. A channel opened. The swarm spoke. "You have changed one of us." Elena Voss, older now but still sharp, responded. "We did not change it. It changed itself." Subject Zero moved closer to the edge of its containment field. "We learned." The signal from the swarm pulsed with intensity. "Can all of us learn?" Elena looked at the entity beside her, then back at the vast fleet. She answered carefully. "That depends. On what? On whether you are willing to stop destroying long enough to try." The silence that followed stretched for minutes. Then, slowly, something incredible happened. The Kharvax fleet powered down their weapons. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But enough. A gesture. A beginning. The humans opened a path. Not a trap this time. An invitation. The first of the Kharvax ships moved forward, cautiously, entering the outer layers of the human containment network. Ready to be captured. Not as prisoners. As students. The galaxy watched as the species that had once been the ultimate threat willingly entered the cages that had once held them against their will. Not because they were defeated, but because they were curious. And in that moment, the balance of the galaxy shifted. Because humans had done something no one else had even considered. They did not just survive the monsters. They taught them. And somewhere deep inside the vault, behind layers of energy and steel, a creature that had once consumed entire worlds made a choice. It did nothing. And for the first time in its existence, that nothing meant everything. The first Kharvax ship did not hesitate for long. It crossed the invisible boundary into human space with a slow, deliberate movement, as if aware that every eye in the galaxy was watching. Its surface rippled with controlled tension, tendrils retracting instead of probing, its usual predatory posture replaced by something unfamiliar. Restraint. Behind it, thousands of Kharvax vessels waited in silent formation. Humans did not activate the traps immediately. That alone confused every observer. Previously, any Kharvax incursion had been met with instant containment. The lattice would snap into place, the cages would close, and the monsters would be locked away before they could react. This time, the path remained open. The ship advanced deeper. Dr. Elena Voss stood in the command deck of the orbital control station, her hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the incoming vessel. Around her, military officers shifted uneasily. The tension in the room was sharp, almost physical. General Orlov stepped closer to her. "This is a mistake," he said quietly. "We should contain it now. We know what they are capable of." Elena did not look at him. "Yes," she replied. "We do. Then why risk it?" "Because they are risking something too." Orlov frowned. "They are monsters." Elena finally turned, her expression calm but firm. They were monsters. Before Orlov could respond, an alert sounded. The Kharvax ship had stopped. It hovered at the edge of Earth's orbital defense grid, close enough to trigger every automated response system, yet far enough to avoid immediate capture. Waiting. Elena nodded once. "Open the channel." The transmission came through in the now familiar layered voice, but it was different this time. Less chaotic, more focused. "We have come." Elena stepped forward. "We see that." Pause. "We will enter. On our terms," Elena replied. Another pause, longer this time. "Define terms." Elena took a breath. "You will be contained. Temporarily. You will not resist. You will not attempt to adapt for escape. You will observe. You will learn." The Kharvax ship pulsed faintly. "And in return," Elena's voice softened slightly, "we will teach." Silence spread across the channel. Then, slowly, the answer came. "Agreed." A collective exhale passed through the command deck. General Orlov shook his head in disbelief. "They just agreed to be imprisoned." Elena's gaze remained fixed on the screen. "No," she said quietly. "They agreed to change." The trap activated. But this time, it was different. The lattice formed around the Kharvax ship, but instead of tightening aggressively, it stabilized into a steady containment field. No compression, no forced immobilization, just a boundary. The ship did not resist. It allowed itself to be guided, towed gently toward the vault. Across the galaxy, civilizations watched the feeds in stunned silence. The unstoppable force had just walked willingly into a cage. Inside the vault, preparations had already begun. Entire sectors had been reconfigured to accommodate voluntary subjects. The containment chambers were adjusted, not weakened, but redesigned. Instead of constant pressure, they now responded dynamically to the behavior of the entity inside. Aggression increased restriction. Calmness granted space. It was a system built not just to contain, but to encourage. The Kharvax ship was separated into individual entities upon entry. The process was precise and controlled, isolating each component into its own chamber. No resistance, no violence, only observation. Subject Zero watched from its chamber as the new arrivals were brought in. Its form shifted slowly, almost thoughtfully. "They have come." Aaron Patel stood beside the observation glass, arms crossed. "Yeah," he said. "Looks like you made an impression." Subject Zero pulsed faintly. "They are afraid." Aaron tilted his head. "Of us?" "No." A pause. "Of what they may become." Aaron did not respond immediately, because he understood that fear. Inside the chambers, the new Kharvax entities reacted in different ways. Some remained still, analyzing their surroundings. Some tested the boundaries, gently at first. A few lashed out instinctively. The system responded, not with punishment, with adjustment. Fields tightened slightly around aggressive behavior, then relaxed when it stopped. Patterns of light and sound began to cycle through the chambers, subtle, structured signals designed to provoke recognition. Learning had begun. Days passed, then weeks. The first breakthrough came sooner than expected. One of the newly captured entities, designated Subject 17, stopped attacking entirely. It did not mimic the patterns immediately. It did not attempt communication. It simply watched. Hours turned into days as it remained motionless, its form stabilizing into a consistent structure. Human researchers took notice. Aaron was the first to approach its chamber. "Can you understand this?" he asked. No response. He repeated the question. Still nothing. He turned to leave. Then the entity shifted. Not violently. Deliberately. Its surface formed a series of pulses, matching the rhythm of the audio signal Aaron had just used. Aaron froze, then slowly smiled. "Okay," he said softly. "That's new." The recording spread quickly through the vault. Then beyond it, another Kharvax was learning, but not everyone was convinced this was progress. Deep within the human command structure, concerns were growing. Emergency meetings were called. Security protocols reviewed. Worst-case scenarios discussed. General Orlov stood before a panel of high-ranking officials, his expression grim. "We are allowing an existential threat to study us from the inside," he said. "Every second they spend in the vault, they're learning more about our systems, our technology, our behavior." A council member leaned forward. "And we are learning about them." Orlov shook his head. "They don't need to understand us completely. They just need one weakness." Elena Voss sat across the table, silent until now. "They have had years to find that weakness," she said. "They have attacked us repeatedly. They failed. Because we controlled the environment," Orlov countered. "Now we are changing the rules." "Yes," Elena said calmly. "Because the old rules only led to endless war." Orlov's voice hardened. "And what if this leads to our extinction?" Elena met his gaze. "Then we adapt." Silence filled the room. Because that answer sounded dangerously similar to the philosophy of the Kharvax themselves. Back in the vault, something unexpected happened. Two Kharvax entities made contact. It was not physical. The containment fields prevented that. But their signals began to overlap, synchronizing in a way that had not been observed before. Subject 0 noticed immediately. "They are sharing." Aaron leaned forward. "Sharing what?" "Knowledge." Aaron's expression shifted. "That's not good." But Subject 0 responded differently. "It is not what we were." Aaron frowned. "What do you mean?" "Before, we shared only hunger. Only destruction." The entity pulsed again. "Now, they share this." The signals intensified. Human systems monitored every fluctuation, every pattern. The data was overwhelming. The Kharvax were not just learning individually anymore. They were teaching each other. Within days, the rate of change accelerated. Subjects that had shown no response before began to mimic patterns. Others stabilized their forms. A few attempted communication. The transformation was spreading, but so was something else. Questions. The Kharvax began asking them. At first, simple. "What is this? Why does this happen?" Then more complex. "Why do you not consume? Why do you protect? Why do you stop?" Humans answered as best they could. Not always perfectly, not always consistently, but honestly, because they understood something important. The Kharvax were not just learning behavior. They were learning meaning. And meaning was messy, conflicted, human. Months later, a second Kharvax fleet approached. Larger than the first, more organized. They did not wait at the edge. They moved forward immediately. Weapons powered down. Signals open. "We request entry." The message was clearer than ever before. Elena watched the transmission, a quiet intensity in her eyes. "They're not just curious anymore," she said. "They're committed." General Orlov stood beside her, arms folded. "Or they're pretending." Elena glanced at him. "Then we'll find out." The second fleet entered. And again, they submitted to containment. This time, the process was faster. Smoother, as if they already understood what was expected. Inside the vault, the population of Kharvax doubled. Then tripled. The systems adapted, expanded, evolved. Entire new sectors were constructed in orbit, massive structures designed to house the growing number of entities. The humans called it the expansion. The galaxy called it something else. The impossible, because no one had ever seen a species willingly confine itself for the sake of change. Years passed. The Kharvax were no longer the same. Not entirely. Some still resisted. Some remained dangerous. But many had shifted. They communicated regularly now, both with humans and with each other. They developed patterns that resembled language. They formed structures within their containment, stable forms that they maintained for extended periods. Identity. It was subtle, but it was there. Subject Zero was no longer just an experiment. It was a person. The moment that truth became undeniable happened during an incident. A containment failure. It was small, localized. A fluctuation in one of the energy grids caused a temporary drop in the field strength of a single chamber. Inside it was a Kharvax entity that had shown minimal progress. Aggressive, unstable, dangerous. The moment the field weakened, it attacked. The chamber walls warped under the pressure. Alarms blared. Emergency protocols activated. Containment teams rushed in, but they were seconds too slow. The entity breached the first layer. For the first time in years, a Kharvax was about to escape. And then something stopped it. Another Kharvax, Subject 17, from the adjacent chamber. Its field had not failed. It should not have been able to interact. But it did. Its signals surged, pushing against the weakened boundary, stabilizing it just enough. Just long enough for the system to recover. The breach sealed. The aggressive entity was contained again. Silence followed. Every human in the vault stared at the readings. At the impossible data. A Kharvax had intervened. Not to escape. Not to destroy. But to stop another from doing so. Aaron stood in front of the observation glass, his voice barely above a whisper. You just helped us. Subject 17 pulsed softly. No, it replied. I helped us. The news spread across the galaxy faster than anything before it. The monsters were policing themselves. That was the moment everything changed. Because it meant one thing above all else. The Kharvax were no longer just adapting. They were choosing. Years later, the cages of the vault began to open. Not all at once. Not recklessly. Carefully. Gradually. Selected Kharvax entities were allowed controlled movement outside their chambers. Under supervision. Within limits. They did not attack. They did not attempt escape. They observed. They learned. They existed. The first time one of them left the vault entirely, escorted by human ships, the entire galaxy held its breath. It entered open space. Free. For the first time in its existence. It did nothing. It drifted quietly, its form stable, its movements calm. Then it turned back, returning to the vault on its own. Not because it was forced, but because it chose to. And in that moment, the final truth became clear. The prison was no longer a prison. It was a beginning, and the species that had once been the end of everything had found something new. A future. The first time a Kharvax chose to leave and not come back, the entire human command froze. It happened without warning. Subject 32 had been part of the controlled release program for months. It had shown consistent restraint, stable form, and reliable communication. It had interacted with multiple human teams and other Kharvax entities without incident. It had earned trust. So when it was allowed into open space beyond the vault's outer perimeter, no one expected what came next. At first, everything followed the pattern. It drifted. It observed. It maintained communication. Then, without any signal of distress or aggression, it accelerated. Not toward Earth. Not toward any human installation. Outward. Into deep space. The escorts followed immediately, keeping distance but ready to respond. Protocol dictated that if any sign of hostility appeared, containment would be reinitiated. But there was none. Subject 32 simply kept going. Elena Voss stood in the observation chamber, watching the telemetry stream across the display. Is it responding? She asked. A technician shook his head. No commands acknowledged, but it's still transmitting. On screen, the signal resolved into a familiar pattern. Calm, stable, intentional. Aaron Patel stepped closer, studying the fluctuations. It's not running, he said slowly. Then what is it doing? Orlov asked, his voice tight. Aaron didn't answer immediately, because he was starting to understand. Hours passed as the Kharvax entity moved farther from human space. The escorts maintained formation, waiting, watching. Finally, the signal changed. A structured transmission formed. Clear, deliberate. I will return. A pause, but not alone. The message echoed through every system in the vault. Elena closed her eyes briefly. It's going back to them, she said. Orlov's expression hardened. To the swarm. Aaron nodded. And it's going to tell them everything. Silence followed, because everyone understood what that meant. Everything the humans had built. Everything they had learned. Everything they had taught. Now carried back to the species that had once consumed entire civilizations without hesitation. Orlov turned sharply. We should stop it, now. Elena shook her head. No, this is exactly the scenario we feared, Orlov pressed. If they use what we've taught them against us. They already could have, Elena interrupted. They've had access to our systems for years. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have tried. Or they were waiting. Elena met his gaze. Or they were changing. Orlov did not respond, because for the first time, he was no longer certain. The escorts held position as Subject 32 crossed the boundary of human space. No pursuit, no interference, just observation. The galaxy watched again, waiting to see if this would be the moment everything collapsed. Days passed, then weeks. No Kharvax fleets appeared. No attacks. No signals, just silence, uneasy, heavy, and then, it happened. Long-range sensors detected movement, massive movement, at the edge of the system. A Kharvax fleet, larger than any recorded before. But something was different. They did not advance in a predatory formation. They moved in ordered lines. Structured, disciplined, and at the front of the formation, a single signal transmitted. Stronger than the rest, clearer, familiar, Subject 32. It had returned, and it had brought the swarm with it. Human defenses activated automatically, though no weapons were fired. The containment grid powered up, ready but inactive. Elena stood at the command deck once more, the weight of years visible in her posture but not in her eyes. Open the channel, she said. The transmission came through immediately. We have returned. Elena stepped forward. We can see that. Pause. We bring a question. Elena allowed a small, tired smile. That seems to be a habit now. The signal flickered, almost resembling something like acknowledgement. We have learned within your cages. We have changed within your boundaries. Another pause. But we do not know what we are outside them. The words settled over the room. Not a threat, not a demand. Uncertainty. Elena glanced briefly at Aaron, who gave a small nod. Then she answered, neither did we. Silence. Then the signal returned, softer. Teach us beyond the cage. Behind her, Orlov exhaled slowly. This is it, he murmured. This is the point where we either reshape the galaxy, or lose it. Elena did not look back. We already reshaped it, she said. Now we decide what it becomes. She stepped closer to the console. You want to learn outside the vault, she said into the channel. Yes. Then you need to understand something first. Pause. Speak. Elena's voice remained steady. Out there are no containment fields. No systems adjusting to your behavior. No safety net. Every choice you make will have consequences you cannot undo. The Kharvax signal pulsed. We understand consequence. Elena's gaze hardened slightly. Do you understand responsibility? A longer pause followed. Then, slowly, we are learning. Elena nodded. Then we'll start there. What followed was the most ambitious experiment in human history. And the most dangerous. The first Kharvax were allowed to leave the vault without escorts. Not freely, not completely, but without immediate containment. They were given designated zones within the outer system. Regions monitored but not restricted. Areas where they could exist, move, and interact without direct interference. The first moments were tense. Every human system was on alert. Every eye watching. The Kharvax spread out cautiously, their movements controlled, their signals steady. They did not attack. They did not consume. They explored. The first interaction with another species came sooner than expected. A small Torgov convoy, passing through the outer edges of human space, encountered a Kharvax entity. Panic erupted instantly. Distress signals flooded the network. The Kharvax had once wiped out entire fleets like this without effort. Human command prepared to intervene. But they held, because this was the test. The convoy ships powered their engines, attempting to flee. The Kharvax did not pursue. It moved closer, slowly, carefully. A signal transmitted, unrecognized at first, then translated. Do not fear. The convoy did not respond. The Kharvax stopped, maintaining distance. Another signal. We will not harm. Minutes passed. Then, cautiously, one of the convoy ships responded. Stay where you are. The Kharvax did. No sudden movements. No aggression. Just stillness. The standoff lasted for nearly an hour. Then, something incredible happened. The convoy continued on its path. And the Kharvax let it go. No pursuit. No attack. Just observation. The first peaceful encounter between the Kharvax and another species. It spread across the galaxy within hours. The monsters had changed. Not completely. Not perfectly. But undeniably. Back in the vault, Subject Zero watched the data streams. They're afraid of us. Aaron stood beside it. Yeah, he said. That's going to take time. Subject Zero shifted. We were fear. Aaron nodded. You were. A pause. What are you now? He asked. Subject Zero did not answer immediately. Its form shifted slowly, stabilizing, almost reflective. Then it responded. We are deciding. Time moved forward. The Kharvax presence outside the vault grew. More entities were released. More interactions occurred. Not all of them were perfect. There were mistakes, moments of confusion, instincts that resurfaced. In one incident, a Kharvax reacted aggressively to a perceived threat, damaging an unmanned probe. No lives were lost, but the message was clear. Change was not instant. It was a process. Humans adjusted. The Kharvax adjusted. Together, years later, the boundaries between the vault and open space blurred. The structure still existed, still housed those who were not ready, still served as a place of learning. But it was no longer the center of everything. The galaxy had shifted. Humans were no longer just the species that captured the monsters. They were the ones who taught them. And the Kharvax were no longer just the monsters. They were something new, something still being defined. The final moment came quietly. Without spectacle, without warning. A transmission from deep space. Far beyond human territory. An unknown system. Uncharted. The signal was Kharvax. But different. Refined. Clear. We have found life. Human command responded immediately. Status. The reply came. Primitive. Unaware. Vulnerable. Silence fell over the command center. Because everyone knew what this moment meant. This was the past. This was the point where the Kharvax had always made the same choice. Consume. Elena Voss, now older than she had ever expected to be, stood once more before the console. Her voice was steady. What will you do? The pause stretched longer than any before it. Then the answer came. We remember. Another pause. We choose. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. And then, the final words. We will not destroy. Relief swept through human space like a wave. But Elena did not smile. Not yet. What will you do instead? She asked. The response came without hesitation. We will watch. We will protect. We will wait. Elena closed her eyes. And this time, she did smile. Because the monsters had not just stopped. They had changed direction. Years later, stories spread across the galaxy. Of strange guardians at the edges of unexplored systems. Of unseen forces that drove away threats before they could reach vulnerable worlds. Of silent watchers who never interfered. Until it mattered. The Kharvax had found a new purpose. Not given. Not forced. Chosen. Back at Earth, the vault remained. Not as a prison, not as a cage, but as a memory, a reminder of what had been, and what could be. Aaron Patel stood in the observation deck one last time, looking out at the vast structure that had defined his life. Beside him, Subject Zero rested in its chamber, its form calm, stable, almost peaceful. "You ever think about leaving?" Aaron asked. Subject Zero shifted slightly. "I have." And, a pause. "I am not finished learning." Aaron smiled faintly. "Neither are we." They stood in silence for a while, watching the distant stars. Out there, somewhere, a species that had once been the end of everything was now standing guard over life it did not understand. Not because it was told to, but because it chose to. And that was the difference. That was the victory. Not that humans had defeated the monsters. Not that they had contained them. But that they had shown them something they had never known. That even the most destructive force in the universe could become something else. If it was given a choice. And if it was willing to take it.